And then what are we looking at with the South China Sea at the moment? This, from what I'm looking at, this seems to be the instance or the issue that would potentially send us to war.
It's the flashpoint. We saw in the First World War, it was the Balkans. It was this mix of passion, a degree of stupidity, and a lot of arrogance, and people thinking, I can't back down. South China Sea is big overreach, a big, greedy, gluttonous push by China to grab resources to the detriment of places like Vietnam, of Thailand, of the Philippines, of Japan, of course, of Taiwan. It's militarizing the sea lanes that takes a significant amount of world sea trade. Remember, most products do not travel for our advanced societies. Most products don't come across land. They come by sea. And so much, let's be honest, China is the factory in the same way as Britain was the factory of the 1800s. And in the late 1800s, it was Britain and Germany and America that were the great factories of the world. China has positioned itself with its trade policy, with its control of its cost of production, with a very compliant labor force. You don't see Chinese workers striking because they don't have free trade unions. That's an inconvenience to the Marxist ideology. You've got so much trade going through the South China Sea. China has created artificial islands and has claimed the undersea resources and the control and the airspace. And that's why the Royal Navy with its carrier group, that's why the US Navy, that's why Australia, Japan, India, a whole host, France, Germany, are doing navigation exercises because they're saying this is international waters. And China is saying, no, it's not. It's our domestic space. And it's an area that is, as they say, many times the size of Texas. It's an enormous part of the world, which is rich in fishing, in oil, but also in access. And it's like somebody coming down your driveway and pitching a tent in your front garden and saying, this is my land. And they live across the road from you, but they're claiming a bit of your front yard.
How is this generally, do you know much about how this is supposed to be arbitrated? It's international waters effectively, and they're kind of claiming that. So
people like the Philippines have been to the relevant international maritime courts. Many of these jurisdictions are based in the Netherlands, the classic Hague, you name it. There's lawyers, to do international work. But China, it's a bit like the bully at school. They're saying we don't accept the international rule of law. We disagree with the determination. It's no surprise. They're big enough. They're powerful enough. What's the Philippines going to do? If fishing boats are caught, they get rammed or they get pushed off or they get seized.
Right.
We're talking very aggressive activity by a country that feels that it's owed a greater share of the cake. And that has led to an over aggressiveness. It's caused I think a mistake for Chinese policy because they've made people who weren't even super friendly with the United States much closer to the United States. The irony of Vietnam saying America should consider maybe a naval base in northern Vietnam. To many veterans of the Vietnam War, that is an astounding example of how the Teutonic plates of politics have changed.
Mm.
And you've got, look at the bipartisanship in Australia. There is a
Even
very
the
strong
Liberal and
sense.
Labour Party, for the first time, it seems that the Labour Party is fundamentally in agreement with the Liberal that we are under threat at the moment.
The Labour Party has had its dramas, and the Liberals, with Chinese influence and grubby lobbying, and people have fallen by the wayside, and rightfully so. But you've got Labour and Liberal in the same way as you've got Conservative and Liberal in Canada, who are taking these national security issues very, very much to heart. And they see this as the national interest. 300 American Marines in Darwin are a drop in the bucket. That having a British nuclear submarine pop up and say hello in Western Australia, and having a carrier group from Britain turn up in the South China Sea and go all the way to Japan and show the flag like the Royal Navy used to do in the old days, that was a very big step. It's a lot of the democracies are getting together in the same way as democracies had to join up in the 1930s against totalitarianism.
So
I know it's a very old analogy, but some days it feels like 1938.
I don't disagree with you. I think I'm more astounded that, just talking to people every day, it seems very, very hard for most people to grasp the concept of geopolitics. And I'm not saying this against anyone, but I mean, very few people that I talk to seem to understand that there are forces beyond our means happening, when they just think the only issue that we really have to worry about is how they dislike their local politician, or why, a traffic light needs to be fixed.
Look, I don't blame people who don't know or don't remember the Cold War, because the Cold War, things moved much slower. Media was much more controlled, both in free societies and, of course, in communist societies. You didn't have so much information at your fingertips. You didn't have the technology. You also didn't have all the white noise, all the background noise.
Yeah.
I go to a hotel now in Britain. I have a choice of 140 TV channels.
Not only that.
Absolutely, 120 are absolute rubbish. I totally get that. But I actually can watch Russia Today news. I can watch Chinese news in the English language, and it's putting out their view. And we've let that happen. It's not like you can see the BBC in every hotel in China. There is a lot more control in their society. And if you were running a one-party state, you would do that. You would not want your population.
That's very, very interesting. I've never once thought about the fact that I can watch Russia Today in virtually every country that I go into. I've never actually thought about that before.
Well, I just think it's incredibly interesting that some of the most passionate, conservative and passionate, what you would call liberal in America or left-wing in, say, Europe, people are getting access to getting their ideas out on a channel that is very much the arm of a very toxic state that has very strong values, which are in no way consistent with traditional conservatism or traditional social democracy or socialism in the Western sense. And I think that's really quite a reminder of democracies are not so much weak, but the perimeter wall around democracies is low. You cannot get information into North Korea. You cannot get information into China to reach the average person that easily. You can get a very bad idea, toxic idea, vaccines are bad, GPs don't know what they're talking about, all politicians are corrupt, stupid, the system is against you, the elite don't care, you name it. Anything that can undermine what keeps people in democracies together can be run, because we're a freer society, and there is less censorship and there is less effective control. And it didn't matter when it was impossible, unless you listened to the radio from Moscow or Beijing, or in the old days, Peking. Now it's on your phone, it's on your tablet, it's on your TikTok, it's on your Instagram. I mean, today's teenager probably gets more bad information in one day than I got in 1 year.
Yeah.
When the world was newspapers, radio, television. It seems so simple and yet so controlled.